Hello and welcome to the Decision Intelligence podcast, where we have real, candid conversations with thought leaders, practitioners, and tech experts about AI, decision intelligence, and the future of work. I'm your host, Fred Laluyaux, co-founder and CEO of Era Technology. Today, I'm joined with Robert Barrios, or by Robert Barrios, the Chief Information Officer of Gallo. He will talk to us more about Gallo, but a family-owned global leader in wine, spirits, malt beverages, and ready-to-drink products. I'm super pleased to welcome you, Robert. Thank you for joining us in the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Fred. I'm super excited to be here.
Cool. So you and I met, 2, 3 years ago,
hmm
a little while ago, and when I first chatted with you, I was surprised by the depth that you had in software, in IT, in architecture. You were pushing us quite hard, and it was fun. And then I discovered that you come from the world of software vendors. You come from the world of Oracle before shifting to the job as CIO of Gallo. So super curious, and I think it'd be interesting for our audience to get a little bit more insight into your journey, and as you go through that, the transition from working from Oracle to working for Gallo, very different environments, very different jobs. So love to get your thoughts on that.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I started at Oracle in the infrastructure space. So, really building out data centers as a network engineer and learned early on the bottlenecks we had to pay attention to when building those high performance facilities. I remember going to Cisco because we were pushing one of their switches to the limits, and I was there with the vice president of hardware engineering, and they explained to us that we were overloading this one ASIC, and we had to move our ports from this one to this one in order to get maximum bandwidth. And
Yeah.
that taught me that you can't just plug Ethernet cables into anywhere. You have to be systematic about where to use it based on the bottlenecks in the hardware engineering. As I moved up the stack, I went from networking to storage. Same thing in the storage side. I was actually working with Sun Microsystems after Oracle acquired Sun on PCI Express and the SSD flash cache that was being built, and how to same thing. It was the same concepts. The same. There was an ASIC, like I said, in the Cisco switch, and now we have a flash cache methodology that we needed to pay attention to. So that really fascinated me around bottlenecks, and really focused on architecture and understanding fundamentally how things work so you could design the maximum throughput needed. Later in my career, I learned to trick myself that process engineering is just as fun as hardware engineering, um, which then takes us to Gallo, right? So
Yeah.
coming from Oracle to Gallo, uh, I was learning all these things. It was really, how do we find and maintain high flow through an organization like Gallo, and leveraging process engineering and finding those bottlenecks was super fun and exciting. And that's what fascinated me from coming from Oracle, which was, in the software industry, one of the newest industries in the world, to winemaking, which is one of the oldest industries in the world.
So let's talk a little bit about Gallo. I think we
Sure.
all you just told us what it is, like wine business, oldest industry in the world. We all enjoy your products, or most of us enjoy your products, but we don't necessarily know much about Gallo as a company, and it's got some really interesting characteristics. So can you tell us? Can you do it as the Gallo pitch in a couple of minutes, and then once we've done with the pitch, I'd love to hear more about when you joined. What was your vision for IT within that company?
Absolutely. So Gallo is a family-owned company, still is today. It was founded right when Prohibition was lifted in 1933. It'll celebrate its 100th year anniversary in a few years, in 2033, and it is the largest winemaker in the world by volume. We have two of the largest wineries, one in Livingston, California, and the other one is in Fresno, California, and we're a 5 billion plus enterprise. In the last few years since I've
Drink a
been
lot of
here,
wine. Right.
Yeah, it's not just wine now. So since
Yeah,
I've
I know.
joined, we've expanded. We are a full total alcohol beverage company now. So in the last 5 years, we've entered what's called the ready to drink space. So one of our most popular beverages is High Noon. It's a vodka seltzer. We have entered the beer market with a product called Montucky, and we recently. And we've been in spirits for a while, mainly with E&J brandy, but we have grown that portfolio to include New Amsterdam vodka, and we just recently closed our acquisition of Four Roses Bourbon, which is a very popular bourbon brand.
Of course. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So there's something interesting about Gallo is I think you're the largest or one of the largest like bottled manufacturer in either in the United States or in the world. I don't know, but it's interesting how you've kind of connecting the and integrated, I should say, vertically. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are a highly vertically integrated company. We have everything from the sand mines that we use to make bottles. So
I
that
didn't
goes to
know
your
that.
point. Yeah, so we own a sand mine through a sister company. We manufacture bottles. We also manufacture labels and closures, which then goes in. We manufacture the liquid, and that goes into the bottles of wine, and we ship that. So, and in addition to that, on the liquid manufacturing side, we own the vineyards that grow the grapes that then we crush into wine. So, coming to Gala from Oracle was super exciting. That's another reason why I came over here. Uh, Everything from agriculture to logistics, supply chain, manufacturing. There's a never a dull moment here at Gala when it comes to the things I get to do every day.
And technology is impacting, every part of your business, and you have a complex organization. When you talk about wine and spirit, you think it's simple. I didn't know that you were all the way to owning your sand mine. So that's phenomenal. I had no idea. But that vertical integration creates complexity. So when you joined the company, you came, I'm sure, knowing you with a vision. What was it, and what is it today? What is your vision for the IT transformation and for Gallo? And then we'll dive into decision intelligence, of course. But curious to get your higher level, story on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, when I joined Gallo, one thing that I believe with and what an IT or what technology does best is it makes the interactions between humans or departments, it should make that more smooth, right?
Hmm.
So if you think about one of my mentors at Oracle said, like we it should be seamless, and I take things literally. And when I think seamless, it's like you find a piece of clothing that you really enjoy and you want to run your hand through it. Can you actually feel the seams? And the goal is not to feel the seams. So as organizations grow, there's definitely drift in how they interact. And what you want to do is leverage technology to make that interaction between departments and between people as seamless as possible. Ensure that all the context flows between those individuals, which is interesting because as we get into the agentic, I think it applies there too. Everyone talks about context with agentic. So how do you ensure that that moves along? So so the themes remain the same no matter what, and that's what I believe the power of technology does is ensure seamless movement of information across people and departments.
Amazing. And as you said, people, departments, agents, it's evolving. So and going looping back that to what we just talked about a minute ago. I mean, you have a complex organization, you have multiple companies, so to speak, or businesses within the same organization. So that connecting tissue is super important for
Mhm.
for us operations. So we'll dive into the decision intelligence topic, right? So you're a client, you've been deploying decision intelligence for a while now. So let's talk about the and maybe you gave us the answer just a minute ago, but what drove you and the organization and your colleagues on the supply chain side to adopt a decision intelligence? What was the context? Why did you do it? Like what drove you this drove the idea of, hey, we need to digitize decisions? Can you talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. So at the end of the day, at its core, everything we do that moves the needle and drives success are the decisions we make, right? If you even just look at professional sports, decisions of what play to use, who's on your roster, who to substitute, when to use a timeout. Those are all decisions
Yeah.
that help you to win the game.
Yep.
So at its core, that's what we do. That's what an organization is built to do. And you don't win if you don't make the right decision at the right time. Some of it, some of it's luck. You make the decision from a lucky perspective. Other times it's purely through strategy and intention. Every process, every system, every report that we use supports decision making. So that's really why decision intelligence to me
Yep.
is super important. I have a mantra that I use, like, what's the verb in your title? And that verb in your title, if you think about what it takes to make a decision, let's talk about an analyst, right? We an analyst should be analyzing and making decisions. Yet in today's world, I would argue 80% of an analyst's time is actually collating, gathering, validating information. So you start on a Monday, they run a report, they see errors. Tuesday, they're reconciling those errors. Wednesday, they are finally able to collate the information. Thursday, they're creating a presentation. Friday, you make a decision.
Yep.
80% of your time is not analyzing, 80% of your time is validating data information. So we want to have those individuals use the verb in their title 80% of the time. And that's what I think decision intelligence allows us to do,
I
is
love that.
maximize those people.
I love the verb in the title. I need to use that. I will steal it from you.
Sounds good.
I'll give you all the credit, but I'll steal it. No, I think it's super interesting because you can apply that to a planner. You can apply that to anything. If you look at the job of a planner, it's 80%, exactly what you've described, collating data,
Mhm.
validating data. And that kind of maybe a related question, but we Gartner in the latest Magic Quadrant for decision intelligence platforms talked about the by 2028, I believe, the shift will have happened between decision centricity and data driven, starting with data driven, which is what we've been doing, trying to enable our people to make data driven decisions.
Mhm.
To so it all starts with the data, having good data and so on and so forth, which is still today in 2026 seems to be a nightmare. To decision centricity, which is what decisions do I need to make, and from there I decide what's the decision logic. Do I want to automate that decision? Do I want to augment that decision? Do I want to have a human in the loop, on the loop, out of the loop? And from there, what data do I need, and so on and so forth. So how do you react to the shift from data driven to decision centric? Is that something that resonates with you?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, the speed and quality of decisions is a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
The faster you could improve that tempo of making the right decisions, the more competitive you are. I have an analogy I use, another analogy I've been using recently around AI, but I think it applies here. For those of you who ever played Mario Kart, uh, when you play the game, there are these turbo pads, and usually the player who hits the turbo pads more often, most consistently wins. And if you don't hit those, and if you have two players who are of equal skill, and one hits the turbo pad just before the other, you are now waiting for that person to make a mistake for you to have the opportunity to win.
I prefer to
So
throw bananas.
well, that's the other thing, right? Like, oh, you do have bananas and turtle shells and those things that you can use to slow down your competition, but but at the end of the
I'm
day, in a real world, that's hard, right? I mean, we taking
Yeah.
in politics, you can probably use regulation to help slow your competitors down, but again, those are far and few opportunities, far and few between opportunities to use those offensive techniques. But really, it's how do you hit those turbo pads first? And to me, those turbo pads are decisions. So the better quality and the faster you can hit those turbo pads, the more you'll be competitive in your marketplace.
The fascinating thing about what you're talking about is that how obvious what you're saying is. Like, the title, making decisions, and there, we find it so difficult for many companies to actually
Mhm.
make that move, make that change, because we've been conditioned for 30 years, 40 years of working a certain way and we're transitioning. So talk a little bit about, first, before we talk about the change and how you manage that transition, facts. What have you deployed? How is it working? What benefits are you realizing to the extent that you can share, of course?
Yeah. Well, we started where we had the highest density of decision making, right? We're talking about decision intelligence and those things. So where we started was supply chain, right? It has
Yeah.
the highest density of decision making. Think about, demand
Correct.
planning, supply allocation, product scheduling, logistics deployment schedules, those things. And it was also the area where I knew that from my experience that if we could make little improvements across the area, that'll help us win, right? Going back to my fascination of high performance computing, probably the thing that could resonate more than if me talking about high performance computing in a data center is probably F1 or racing, right?
Yep.
If you ever watch Drive to Survive, they are trying to figure out how to tweak this and that from the previous race and last year's race. So seasonality. If you think about racetracks on the course for Melbourne as an example, right? That's the same thing as seasonality in a business. They want to learn from that racetrack, and you can't necessarily apply those rules for Melbourne to Singapore as an example, right? So timing changes. And in supply chain, we have to pay attention to that too. For Gallo, our peaks are like summertime, right? For high noon, high noon is a summertime drink.
Sure.
Wine that has different occasions that we need to pay attention to. Everything from Christmas to your traditional holidays to when is the peak of weddings, right? Those things are important for us to understand in order
That
to
drives
deliver the
demand for
product.
sure.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Right. So the other thing that we paid attention to are what are the low value, high frequency levels of work, and how can we take a look at those items and leverage a platform like Aera in order to remove those low value, high frequency work items, so that the people can concentrate on the high value decisions that we
Sure.
need to make.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you thought when you mentioned low value, high frequency. I often, when I talk to a prospect, they say, "Where do we start?" I say, "Well, you can start with complex optimization and very." So people have a tendency to say, "Okay, I'm going to throw Era at the hardest problem I have," and it
Right.
works, but it's not best for adoption
Mm-mm.
because you realize that the hardest problem that you have will be solved inside your company by a handful of people, and the others don't
That's right.
necessarily understand how that optimization process works. And I always say, start with medium complexity. So I differentiate value and complexity. Complexity, what are the decisions that are, you can describe them, they're hyper time consuming and high volume, high velocity, right? So you start with, my recommendation is always to start with high volume, medium complexity, because this is where you're going to give the most help to your operators. That's the kind of dull, repetitive work that they know they have to do. I need to load my planning parameter. I need to build that forecast. And yes, there is value in all this work. Otherwise, the work would not be done. But there is a manageable level of complexity. People truly understand how those decisions are made. Then you digitize that and you get a massive adoption because you're helping people. And then gradually you go toward more complex skills. Do you want to talk a little bit? And again, I don't want to put you on spot. A little bit
That's
about
okay.
the skills that you guys have deployed so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the skills are things like the ability to direct ship. What
Yeah.
choices are we making in order to bypass, ensure that we're having our fulfill rate as high as possible. So that's one example.
Minimizing
Um,
costs as well, right? So
as
you're
right.
trying to make sure that you optimize those routes. Do you go through a distributor? Do you go straight to your customers? So that's a real time optimization that you're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's one example of what we're doing. We have a few more skills that we're working on, but don't want to necessarily give away all of our
Yeah,
examples
yeah, yeah.
here
I
on
get
the
it.
podcast. But it's I could tell you our investment in this space is significant, and we do believe in it.
That's awesome. So we and I, when we met the first time, we talked a bit about the IT infrastructure, how it works, but we talked a little bit about change because you are, as you just said, right? You're removing the repetitive, dull work, the lower value activities that people have to deal with. It's part of the job, part of the title, as you said before. Um, but we're not talking about a technology that replaces another technology. We're talking about a technology that's coming new to actually help work with people and do some of their work. So you've done a really good job at Gallo. We see a lot of companies. You've done a really good job at bringing your end users in the process. Talk a little bit about the change, how you're driving this change in the organization.
Absolutely. Change management is one of the most important things that I think most organizations skip, and that's why you have so much failure. I've in my career, I said I was at Oracle for 14 years. Towards the tail end of my career, I was supporting so many ERP, CRM initiatives, and I'll tell you that the number one thing that failed was people doing technology first, not
Yeah.
necessarily process first, right? And going back to decision making, right? At the end of the day, the goal is making the right decisions as fast as possible, which is supported by a process or practice that you're betting on, and then you have the technology stack below it. And I don't think enough organizations are successful in communicating that. So one another topic another thing that I use in order to work with leaders is I tell them, look, at the end of the day, the tech between IT and the technology, we are your general contractor to build the kitchen of your dreams. At the end of the day, we aren't going to be cooking in that kitchen. You're going to be cooking in that kitchen. So
Hmm.
so from a change management perspective, I think that's important because the ownership is one of the main reasons why change management fails. People confuse who owns it, and by leveraging this technique I use, people realize, oh yeah, you're right. Supply, it's not that at the end of the day, supply chain is the one who's going to be cooking in that kitchen. Supply chain is going to be cooking that recipe and delivering that value, right? That meal to someone. IT is
Yeah.
not going to be in there. Your SI is not going to be in there. You're going to be in there. So ownership to me is number one. In this number two, especially in this age of AI, I think unlearning as fast as you can is very, very important. That goes, Fred, to what you said earlier, right? There's a lot happening, and people need to put their mind in a different way that the old org structure or the old way of doing things continue to be there. Unlearning that what you used to work on before is still valuable, but you don't have to do it anymore. You can move up to doing higher value things and let the tool do the work for you. That's an area where having the team rally to a different version of winning is important.
But it's
And then
always a little scary, right? Because you now have this technology. People probably fall into some level of comfort. Well, I got to do this. I'm going to do this. If I do this, which is a bit repetitive and all, I've done my job. I'm good. And now you have a technology that says, well, I can take care of that for you. Now use your brain to actually guide me and do more. And that's not an easy thing. We've had Douglas Guillerme from Hershey, and his approach was to explain to his team, hey, the way you're going to keep your job is by working with Era. If you reject the recommendation and decide to not work with it, that's the fastest path to getting in trouble. And I kind of like the approach because, like, this is the future of your own work, but it means that your own work is changing, which of course makes people sometimes a bit uncomfortable at first, and then they start embracing it. Did you experience any of that when you launched, and making sure that people got got in, and did you have any resistance? I don't think you did, from my understanding of your work a little bit, but can you talk about it?
yeah, so there's always resistance, but I don't think we've received as much resistance as other companies have. I think
Mm,
we've invested in change management quite a bit to
yeah,
have people understand, and I think it goes back to the human element, right? Like if we need the team to rally towards the enterprise goal, not to their own what their own goals are or the goal of that
that's good.
organization, right? And that's important because if you aren't doing that, then you're not going to win that support. Yeah, people need to be able to understand where they fit in the overall ecosystem and structure and how they
Yeah,
individually add value to that organization. And yeah, it's tough, right? If you have an individual who has been doing a particular task every day, and they're told one day that that task isn't as valuable as it used to be. That is hard for people to hear. But
yeah.
if you show them that there is something else a higher opportunity or a similar opportunity for them to go after, that's where we've been able to move, have people come along on the journey.
So I think that's super important, and raise your nose to look at the Uber goal, and press on the boost button as opposed to throwing bananas. I think that's pretty much what you're saying. But how did you communicate, like you as a CIO in a pretty large organization, complex? How did you How do you communicate about these programs? I know, I suspect I understand how the business does it, but do you have a role in communicating that vision and how change is impacting that vision?
Absolutely. So I'm out there all the time. I believe in talking to our users, our customers. Actually, I actually believe in experiencing
Yeah,
the work as it happens. So I
great.
do my best to ride along with sales, right? I attend winemaking meetings. Right now, there's a major project that we're working on where we are reviewing how we source our grapes. So I actually sit in those business meetings so I can have a first person view of what's happening. And in this day and age, especially with agentic AI, we need to see the existing process in action in order to help evolve it, right? I wasn't hired here at Gallo, and no executive is hired at any company to just steward existing processes, right?
Yeah.
We are there in order to provide our experience and our opinion and make bets and educated decisions that change the mold of the future. And I don't think I can do that if I'm just making it blindly through information that's relayed to me by my team. So working with my team, being there in firsthand is important. And then number two, from a leadership perspective, even though I know I have the answer, I do my best to have constructive discourse with my team so that they can learn learn through experience and through conversation. I think too many leaders, they make the decision, and they don't explain why. People don't understand how they get there, what experience was used in order to come up with that answer, and which is what cripples organizations in the long term. So I believe in building the next generation of leaders, and also by having that discourse out loud, I do feel like that helps us build better systems. As you know, just building Aera, that's you need to tease that information out, and then
Yeah.
so you can systemize it. If you're not, Aera at the end of the day has codified discourse, right?
Love
That
it.
that's kind of what we're doing.
The one thing that I noticed with you guys and a few other companies, and usually they're the ones that are very successful with their programs. When you guys came to see us in Mountain View, I don't know, 10 of you, it was maybe a year ago. When you look at the room, you walk in the room, you start engaging with people, you don't know who is IT, you don't know who is business. And the questions that are coming from IT are business, and the questions that are coming from business are IT related. And that's very different than what you see in other types of organizations where IT doesn't seem to really be that connected with the business. And I think this is one of the reason why you guys are so successful, because this is a decision intelligence. Is it IT? Yeah, of course, it's enabled, as you perfectly said earlier. It's completely enabled by IT. You're building the kitchen, but it's run by supply chain, and the two have to be very interchangeable in those meetings. And something I've noticed with Gallo and with you as well, Robert, is that you guys have a very strong cross polarization of ideas and initiatives, which is really remarkable.
We thank you very much. It's something we work hard to do. It goes back to organizational success and change management, right? I have been working really hard with my team to ensure they understand success for IT isn't that we commissioned the system and went live.
Exactly.
Success is adoption of the system, and it does what it says it's going to do for the organization, right? We built the kitchen of the dreams. We've done it to their spec, and we've showed them how to use it. People always ask me, above my left shoulder here, there's a Hot Wheels forklift. And the reason that's there is one of my major projects was our deployment of enterprise warehouse management. That
Yeah.
was my reminder that at the end of the day, my team and I are building that system for these forklift drivers, right? This is who we're building it for.
Love it.
And my team and I, we do our best to do little significant, do little tidbits like this to remind our team that success isn't just deploying the software. It's
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
the users at the end of the day.
The impact that you get. So you talked about agentic a second ago. You again, you and I talked about this a while back, making so much. I need to update you on a few things, by the way. But my question is not that. We talked, I think you were one of the first that I discussed with the collapsing of the stack and the impact
Mhm.
of agentic on the stack. We had long conversations on that. How is your thinking evolving and on how agentic, to be more specific, other than saying AI, is going to impact your tech stack? A bit more of a
Absolutely.
nerdy question.
Yeah, and you and I haven't talked in a while, but definitely the most recent announcements or impacts in the organization that continue to have evolved my thinking. And it's a lot of people still think it's vaporware, but at the end of the day, I do believe agentic teams is a thing. The open claw is real.
Yeah.
And and creating an agentic architecture where you are creating context, right? And those contexts really are specialists. How can we translate the specialists we need that could ensure that you are made that whether it's a human or an agent in this overall new world enterprise model, whatever that enterprise model is, which I believe is a combination of agents and humans working together, and leveraging the power of that particular individual. Right? Humans, our we really want our humans to be focused on exception handling, problems that are not that don't reoccur all the time. It really requires human judgment. And how do
And
we have
design as
agent?
well, I assume, right?
Yeah, and design, right?
Mhm.
Design and those things. Because LLMs, all an LLM is it's seeing patterns that other people have done, and gives you an idea or recommendation of an existing pattern, right? It still has yet to be proven that an LLM can identify a novel way of solving a problem. Even the things that you read in the news about drugs being applied somewhere else, that's not necessarily a epiphany that an LLM had. It leveraged correlation of symptoms it saw in these patients, a correlation of these chemicals in this drug, and that's how it came up with that drug might be able to be used on that disease, right? So we still need humans to come up with that next level of evolution that's not correlation.
Yeah. There's something that will, I'm going to run out of time, so maybe I'll keep that for
It's okay.
another conversation. But there's something that we build that's really fascinating is the ability to look in the past and say, okay, when this storm arrived 5 years ago, this is how we reacted, and this is where we dispatch inventory to fix the things that were broken and so on and so forth. So that memory of the decisions that you've made over time, when it's leveraged by the proper agentic layer, will give you some insights that are not generative per se, in terms of like it's not thinking about a new option, but there's so much memory in what a company has done at scale, all the decision that it's made, that just harvesting that is providing some insight that sometimes feels that they're completely new, even though I understand the point that you just made a few minutes ago. We're
Mhm.
gonna have to wrap up. I could speak with you for hours, like always, but hey, you've started on that journey. You guys moved very fast. It was incredible to see the speed at which you operated. Both, I would say, the feeling of Gallo is deliberate, calm, and fast at the same time. You're not hectic. You're just doing the work, but in a very structured, very organized fashion, and very deliberate, I think. But what
Thank you.
advice would you give to your peers, CIOs or business people who are starting on their decision intelligence journey today? What would you tell them in a couple of minutes?
Yeah, a couple of minutes. Can start with the goal first or decision first, right? And then from there, move backwards. It's as simple as that. Uh, but really, on the decisions, one thing that we do a little bit differently is I like to move fast. I think you've gotten to know me very well on that. And one way we move fast is we don't necessarily go through a whole rubric of what's the most high value ROI project out there. A lot of times, it's what's the most shovel ready, right?
Yeah.
And shovel ready in the decision making space is what data has already been digitized that we already have, and how can we move to prove that technology, prove the model out with those things. A lot of organizations get into analysis paralysis that, wow, you know, we can't do that one because we don't even have that in an ERP. We can't do that one because whatever excuse, and then they have to do a foundational initiative in order to get those transactional details into the system. I would recommend to start with shovel ready.
I agree. Robert, thank you so much, my friend. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. Thanks for your insights and your perspective, and congrats to Gallo and your team and on the success that you're having right now with your program. I'm sure you get success in many other programs. So, really, really enjoyed the conversation with you.
Thank you,
And
Fred.
yeah, pleasure. And this concludes our Decision Intelligence podcast, a CIO's view from Gallo Decision Intelligence, Agentic AI, and the Enterprise Stack. You can view today's podcast on our website at www.eratechnology.com. Thank you very much.